Now we're going to look at scope and nesting for time contexts. And the basic idea here is that you can nest time contexts within one another. So for example, here we have one time context at time t. But within that, we have another time context at time 0. So what happens here is that temporarily, Max rolls the time slider back to 0, does something, and then this nested time context goes away and it goes back to this time context again. So if it was at 100, let's say in this time context, it would go back to 0, do something, and then go back to 100 again. So let's just take a look at this program and see what it does. I'm just going to minimize this. So let's play this animation. So that sphere is green and then it turns red. So the sphere starts out green, but when this statement becomes true, the sphere is turned red. If this statement is not true, the sphere remains green. And the way that this is running right now, it simply turns red around this point, and it never does become green again. It stays red the whole time. And what we're looking at here is if the absolute value of z is greater than the z position of this sphere at time 0 plus 5, then turn it red. So Max goes back to 0 on the time slider, looks at the z position of the sphere, adds 5 to it. So let's say the z position of the sphere is 1 at that time. It'll add 5 to it and get 6. Then it will say, is the absolute value of z right now greater than 6? If it is, it turns the sphere red. If not, it'll turn it green. So again, let's say that z was 1 at time 0. This becomes 6. This says if z gets to greater than 6 or to less than minus 6, the sphere will turn red. Now here, these two commented outlines, I'm going to uncomment those. First of all, this just gets the previous time into a variable. So prev underscore t equals t minus 1. And then it says set z equal to the z of the sphere at that previous time. So since the next thing that comes along is using that z to set the position of the sphere, what we're doing is we're setting the sphere's color to red, but we're not letting the sphere go to the place it would have gone to. Instead, we're kicking it back to where it was at the previous time. That is, in the previous frame. So let me minimize this. Control A to select all this. Delete it. Bring this up again. And create. And let's just run that. So at that point where it would have gone above the level we're checking for, instead of going above it, it stays at the same level and it turns red. So once again, this is a nested time context. It's going and it's looking and seeing what was the position of the sphere in the frame previous to the current one. So that concludes this movie on nesting and scope for time contexts.